Live the Goals Podcast, episode number 145.
Live the Goals Podcast, your place for motivation, life lessons, and laughter. Don't settle for wandering through a mundane life. Instead, let us help you reach your goals and live a fulfilling life doing what you love. Our guests know what it's like to live with purpose and laugh along the way. Warning, if you're a stick in the mud, you definitely need to stick around. Loosen up your ties, kick off your high heels, and let's get to it with your host, Dale Richardson.
Welcome back to Live the Goals Podcast, friends and family. So happy to have you back with us for another interview episode of Live the Goals Podcast. I'm your host, Dale Richardson, and today's interview is with Nick Conedera. We had a fun interview. Nick is a writer, director, and filmmaker who is doing some really big things. So I'm not going to spoil. I know I usually tell you some of the stuff we talk about, but I don't want to spoil that because he is working with some pretty big people in this space, right? The motivational space, which is different for a filmmaker. So I want to let you hear about that. And he's also written a script and a film that's out now on iTunes, as well as a bunch of other places, Amazon included, that you can go and buy about his experience selling knives. so you gotta hear this interview. Looking forward to what you'll learn. Lots of great lessons here for you regarding goal setting, success, and overcoming your obstacles. He shared several obstacles he faced on the way to where he is now. So friends and family, looking forward to you learning and laughing throughout this interview. And if this is your first time joining us here on Live the Goals Podcast, I'd love for you to learn a little bit more about what I'm doing here. So go back to episode 0. That's where I told everybody what I was planning on doing with this podcast. And you'll learn a little bit more about the 4 episodes I do during a week, the Word of the Day episodes, as well as the interview episode that I do each week. So go back, take a listen to that. Glad you're here. Now, with no further ado, friends and family, my interview with Nick Conedera. Okay, friends and family, let's get started. Excited to introduce our guest today. Our guest is Nick Conedera, and Nick is a writer, director, and producer who's won over 25 regional and national awards for his work, including 3 regional Emmy Awards. After graduating magna cum laude in 2010, Nick wrote a script inspired by his experience selling knives, which, by the way, he totally crushed, and he raised $222,000 from private investors and hired 100 artists and professionals. All that was during a recession, by the way. So Nick now coaches artists on creating sustainable business models around their art practice. And he's also directing the Miracle Morning movie with Hal Elrod. Ever heard of him? And he'll tell you a little bit about his film Sharp that just came out on Amazon and iTunes. Nick, are you ready to help us set and reach goals that matter?
Heck yeah, man. I'm happy to.
Let's do it, Nick. So Nick, I've just given our friends and family just a little overview of who you are. I'd love for you to expand on that and give us a bigger picture of who Nick is.
Well, that's a great question. I guess I've always felt a calling to use my skills and my talents and my passion to help people and make the world a better place. And right now I'm doing that through the Miracle Morning movie, a feature documentary that I'm making based on the book, The Miracle Morning, but also through my business that I'm continuing to grow. It's just a video marketing company, basically. I help elite entrepreneurs tell their stories through, film and storytelling. And it's growing very rapidly. It's kind of like I can't do everything myself. I'm building my team every week, but it allows me, it's my vehicle to sort of get my work out to the world and to serve clients, basically.
And Nick, what's the name of that company that's because I know I've got entrepreneurs listening. What's the name of the company that you're using to help entrepreneurs with their video branding?
Just Conedera Studios.
Awesome. You know that Nick will give you his information, how to get in touch with him at the end of this episode. But I wanted to make sure you at least knew the name of it right up front. Nick, my friends and family know that I love laughing through life. And, there's lots of ups and downs, but I try to find a way to keep a smile on my face. So I'd love to hear a story that you might have, just something that happened recently that made you laugh or chuckle, anything that happened.
Yeah, I have a story. So I've been screening the film since it just came out. I've been screening the film and doing talks at various conferences for Vector Marketing, which is the company that the film is inspired by, Vector Marketing and Cutco Cutlery. And I did a lot of screenings on this West Coast tour that I did. And one of the stops that I had was up in Canada in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. And I was living in Washington at the time, and I was driving from Washington. So I drove through the border, and I knew that I wouldn't have any service. It was like in the middle of the mountains. And like my phone service, I don't think it reached Canada at the time. So I took a picture of the map that I had. Like, I just took screenshots on my phone of all of the various maps that I had to go through to get to Saskatoon.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand the miles to kilometer conversion. So
Yeah.
I misjudged the amount of distance it would take. So I was at like pretty much an empty tank of gas, like even though I had half an hour to go left in my trip. So when you're going into Saskatoon, it's really pretty. You go down these mountains into this, big old lake, and the speed limit was like 100. It was kilometers per hour.
What?
But I thought it was like miles per hour. I was like, oh damn, I can go so fast here.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's kilometers. Like it's like 65 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But so I was almost out of gas, so I just basically put it in neutral, and I just sort of drifted down the entire mountain at like 50 kilometers an hour, like super slow. And so when I got to the conference and I spoke, I was like, sorry if you saw like a blue Toyota Matrix like going super slow down the mountain. I misjudged the miles per hour to kilometers per hour conversion, and that was just me. I was just going really, really slow in the view.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fun.
Lucky you were going downhill, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Just coasted the entire way down.
Oh, that would have been bad. I'm glad that turned out all right, because I imagine being stuck on a mountain with no reception could not have been a cool thing.
Exactly.
Well, Nick, this is Live the Goals podcast. I always like to talk about goals on this podcast, of course. And what I'd like first, and we're going to get into in a second, what the big goals that you're working on. But before we get there, I'd love for you to share with our friends and family, is there a tip or a suggestion or a strategy that you use when you're setting goals that maybe our friends and family could implement that might help them as well?
That's a good question. I think the first thing that people miss when they're trying to achieve, something, whatever it may be, whether it's personal or professional or relationship-wise or financial, whatever, is having clarity around what exactly it is that you want. Like some people are like, well, I want to be wealthy. Well, what does that mean exactly to you? You have to define it very, very clearly and set a very specific intention for that goal that can be broken down into, very specific actions that you can take on a daily basis. So I think clarity is the biggest thing. Have a very specific, clear vision that you can feel, you can taste, you can see of, the end goal that you want to achieve and so that you can figure out exactly how you're going to get there.
Yeah, Nick, I love that you added in that last part about being able to like touch it and see it and feel it and smell it. Exactly. Friends and family, like clarity isn't just, okay, I've got this vision or this vision board. I mean, it's being there. I mean, you can experience it. That's how clear that vision is of what your goal is. So thank you so much, Nick, for sharing that with our friends and family. And like I said, I want to talk about you. We talked a little bit before we started recording here. So I know you've got a lot of big, gigantic, fantastic things going on right now, Nick. What are you working on? What's the big goal that you're shooting for right now, Nick?
I'm trying to get my production company to produce a revenue of $100,000 this year, which I'm currently on track to do.
Wow, that is fantastic. Do you mind sharing? And if this is too nosy, just let me know. Do you mind sharing where you were when you set this goal?
Yeah, at the beginning of the year. Well, basically, I was living in Washington for a bit right after I finished my first feature film, Sharp. I just got the heck out of LA because I just hated it. And I moved to this really tiny town in the middle of the forest called Port Townsend, Washington. And my family had a house there. So I just lived in this beautiful house, in the middle of the forest. It was amazing. But coming out of that, it was a very small town. I was very secluded and very isolated. And I learned very quickly that it was not supportive. It wasn't a place that I could really pursue my dreams and make money, basically, by doing that. So I left July of 2015 and I set out on a road trip to basically get down to San Diego to shoot the Miracle Morning teaser / concept trailer with Hal, so that we could put it out there and just basically tell everybody that, hey, we're starting to make this movie. And that kind of kicked off this journey that I've been on for the last year. About 14 months now, I've been traveling the world, basically making this film and traveling for other clients. And it was just the timing was right. The need was there for the value that I offer, which is video marketing and storytelling, really is what it comes down to. Storytelling through a moving image medium. And so I started having pretty big months, bigger than I've ever had in my life. As an artist, I'd never made over like $3,000 or $4,000 in a month. And I was having like 6, 7, 8, 9 grand months. And I was like, whoa, I must be doing something right. And I was traveling too. So I didn't have any bills. Like I didn't have any things to pay. Everything was paid for. And I did that for about a year until I landed in Austin. And so earlier this year, I just realized I kind of had an awakening within myself. I realized that I've always had this weird relationship with money, and I can go into that if we want to, but I was always an artist, and I always kind of had these limiting beliefs that money is bad and it taints the reason why you're making your art. And I just didn't have a very good relationship, but I always wanted to be wealthy. So there was this inner conflict within me. And earlier this year, I just got rid of that and decided, like, I really want to be wealthy. I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 32 so that I can make my films. And that was the reason that I wanted to be wealthy, so that I can make my films and help people. And so that ended up, setting this goal of producing revenue for 100 grand this year. And I wasn't on track to do it, but after the summer, I had a big summer. I'm on track to do it now. And that's really exciting.
That's really exciting. And Nick, you talked about your relationship with money, and there are probably a lot of people listening who are going through that as well, and maybe some of them that don't even realize it. So yeah, you said you'd be willing to go into that a little more, and I would like you to expand on that a little more about what that conflict was, because I'm sure there's somebody out there that could benefit from you sharing a little more about how you realized that you had that conflict, and then what you did to turn that around.
Well, my first mistake is that I went to school.
Okay.
No, I think school conditions us to believe that we need to go through life a certain way, which is get good grades so you can get into a good college and get a good degree and get a job 9 to 5 and, go into debt, buy a house, buy a car, have kids, go into more debt, try to save and tithe and invest in mutual funds and until you retire, basically. And then most people die within like a couple years after retiring. And I just don't think that didn't ever align with my beliefs about how life. I always thought there should be something more. And I think the focus in our culture today, the focus on paying your bills and making money is like way too much. Because it doesn't create happiness, and it doesn't allow you to figure out what your purpose is and what your passion is, and allow you to use those, skills to help the world, or whatever it is that your purpose is. And I'm reading a lot about conscious capitalism and the new fourth sector movement. And a lot of the statistics that they've collected point to the fact that, yeah, money is, of course, profit is important. Like money is basically the lifeblood, the energy that makes the whole system go round. And as a business, you cannot survive without profits, obviously. But the CEO of Whole Foods, John Mackey, who wrote this book, Conscious Capitalism, with Raj Sisodia, has a really great quote because he's in the food business. He says, money is like food. Basically, we need it to survive, but nobody wakes up every day to eat food, just like no business should exist every day just to make money. And they found that conscious businesses that have conscious leaders and managers, have a conscious culture, focus on a higher purpose more than just making profit, focus on a quadruple bottom line or a triple bottom line that puts their focus on helping people and impacting the world rather than just, financial profit and loss statements every month. They actually found that the companies that are focused on those things actually make 14 times more profits than those that don't in the same industry.
Wow.
So that tells you a lot about, sort of life and how as living beings, we create happiness and value and synergy with others in our community and our world. It's by focusing on what you're good at and what you love to do and using that to help people. And ultimately that creates more profit. Money is just, it's not an end in itself. It's a means to that end.
Right. And Nick, basically, as you're talking about these conscious companies, it led me right into the next section, which is purpose, because that to me feels a lot like people having clarity about their purpose and what they want to do. And you talked about the fact that living these lives where we're just paying our bills is not satisfying, and having that clarity around why we're here changes things for us. And friends and family, I generally do a really short pre-interview before we start recording, and Nick asked me why I do this podcast, and so I wanted to hold off until now so that everyone would have the benefit of hearing it. Nick, I'd love to hear why it is that you do what you're doing. Why is it that you're doing the films? Why is it that you're doing the branding company as well?
To elevate the consciousness of humanity. I feel even since I started making films when I was 13 going on 14. And even since that, even then when I was just barely going through puberty, my voice was cracking. Like I didn't know what to do with my life. For some reason, I knew I was called to make short films that actually had meaning and purpose and had something important to say that made people look at the world differently. And I think my films won a lot of awards during that time period, during that time in my life, even though I was so young, because I was telling stories with that purpose of, teaching. It's edutainment to me. It's not just entertainment and storytelling, but it's also education.
Yeah. How did that come about? Did that just kind of hit you out of the blue? Did you have something inside that you kind of felt it was there the whole time and you did some exploration, or how did you kind of figure that out, especially at such an early age? Well,
the only way I can describe it is love at first sight. I'm still trying to wait for that to happen with a girl, but I can't describe the feeling. But I remember the very first week I started making films. I had a Mac computer because my dad was always a graphic designer, so I've always been on Mac. Okay. And the early Macs of like 1998 to 2000, they came with all this free artistic software, like movie making software, music making software, photo software, just for free, which was amazing, these amazing tools. And I don't know how many artists Steve Jobs has launched just by doing that, but I was certainly one of them. And I just started, I was like, oh, what's this? I was bored, that summer. It was a boring summer in suburbia, had no idea what to do. And I was just sitting at my computer and just like, oh, I wonder what this does. Let me try this out. This would be fun. And started downloading skating videos illegally of my favorite skaters and just cutting them together and making my own like skater mixes basically of my favorite skaters. And I can't describe the feeling, but even just doing that and seeing how the different scenes and the different skaters cut together and changing the music and everything, like I can't describe it, but somehow I knew that I would be making films for the rest of my life. Whether I made money at it or not, I didn't care. Like I just knew I had found my calling.
And this may be a softball question, or maybe not. I'm wondering, because you found out so early that like, hey, this is what I'm here to do, and I'm going to be doing this forever. Have you had some periods where you doubted that? Have you had some periods where you had to reassess and clearly you reassessed and moved forward if you did have those periods, but have you been, solid the whole way through, or have you had a few periods where you kind of had to reassess and said, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing?
That's a good question. I've definitely had those moments, but usually they just give me more fuel, it just gives me even more of a reason to push forward. But there's definitely been times where I thought like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'd love to hear, and it doesn't have to be about those moments, but I'd love to hear about one of your obstacles, right? Sometimes we call them failures, and I like to look at them as obstacles. And regardless of what you call them, I do believe that a lot of times we need those failures or obstacles to get to where we're trying to get, right? We may not enjoy it while we're going through it, but the lessons we pull out of that oftentimes launch us to a new level if we're willing to apply those lessons. And so, Nick, I'd really love to hear your story of one of those down in the dumps or one of those big, gigantic walls you got to, because I know there are people out there that think maybe you had smooth sailing. Like, hey, look, he figured out what he wanted to do early. Of course it was smooth sailing. No, everybody faces obstacles. And I'd love for you to share with our friends and family so that they know they can make it through their obstacles too.
Yeah, I'll give you a few that'll paint a very contradictory image, I think, of pursuing one's purpose. When I was first making films in high school, like it seemed like everywhere I went, I was winning awards, and I was always getting excused from school to go to some competition. And one of the competitions was in El Cajon. I submitted 2 films and I got 3 awards. And I was so confused. I was like, wait, is that fair? Is that even possible? Mm-hmm. And I remember driving home with my dad, and I just felt like so empty and gross. And I was like, why this isn't the reason I'm making films, like to get the trophies. Like their trophies are cool, but I don't know why it just made me feel gross and unfulfilled, even at that age. So that's an early picture. Let me give you another picture. When I was in college, we have different productions. I was at film school. We have different productions that you're supposed to make. And for my advanced production, you're not allowed to shoot 35 millimeter. And I was like, screw that. I have the money. I do darkroom photography, so I know like how to handle 35 millimeter. My cinematographer knows what he's doing with 35 millimeter. Mm-hmm. The film medium itself is dying, so I'm going to get my hands on as much 35 millimeter as I possibly can before it's completely gone. And now it's very rare that, even big studio films get to shoot 35 because it's really a dying art form. But so I was like, that doesn't make sense. It's my money. It's my production. Why would I let them tell me what I can do with my film? So I went against the rules and I bought a bunch of 35 millimeter film and shot it and rented my own 35 millimeter camera and got it developed myself, paid for everything myself. And then they basically called me into their office and just berated me and told me how I was just such a bad student and such a bad person and all these things that I did wrong. And I was like, I don't understand why am I here? Like, you're just telling me all these things I did wrong. Like, what is the point of this meeting? And the department chair just said to me, well, we have to figure out whether this program's a right fit for you. And I was like, you're going to expel me from film school because I shot film? That's so stupid. And he's like, well, that's what we have to figure out. So they basically just made an example of me, and the whole school knew about it. I basically wanted to expel me because I shot 35 millimeter on an advanced production. And I was so hurt because they thought they had the authority, but they didn't really have the authority to tell me what I could or could not do with my film. They didn't own the copyright to the film. It was my script that I wrote. It was my idea, and it was my money. Most of all, like, I paid for it all myself. The money that I made from, selling knives earlier that summer. So I had a moment to myself, and I was crying and just like realizing, like, if I'm making, I have a history of causing trouble throughout my life, and if I'm causing this much trouble in film school before I even get to the industry, then maybe I'm just not meant to be in this industry. And so there's another picture, but it eventually just blew over, and the dean of students was like, they can't do that. Like, they're just puffing smoke. Like, they have no authority to expel you. So
right.
There's a couple of stories.
And that sounds really challenging, right? Especially knowing this is what you want to do, and then, the people that are leading you telling you you're doing it wrong, and that they might kick you out, and it must have felt like crush your dreams at that point is how it must have felt. Like they're willing to crush my dreams right now.
Yeah, there's one more story that's even worse than those, and I can share it if you want.
Yeah, please do. Yes, I'd love for you to.
Okay, I'm just concerned about the time because I'm a time machine. So once I got out of school, I felt like I was being held back because I really wanted to make a feature, but my time was absorbed by school. So as soon as I got out of school, I started making my first feature film, and I raised the money for it. I made the film. Everything went pretty smoothly, like I think abnormally smoothly, and the film turned out just so well. And the premiere was a huge hit, and someone was at the premiere who saw it, and they worked for like a sales agent, and they, gave me a distribution deal offer, and then I got another one, and this was like immediately after I premiered. It's my first independent feature film, so I was like, basically, like, I've made it. Like, this is it. Like, my film. They're like, we're gonna put your film on every streaming and VOD and cable satellite platform in existence, and like everybody's gonna see it, and you're gonna be rich and famous, and you're going to launch your career. And I was like, this is it. This is it.
Yeah.
Like, I made it. I didn't have to wait till I was 50. I made it at 22.
Yeah.
So what happened was after I signed with them, they sat on the film for a whole year. Meanwhile, I was doing a bunch of marketing and promoting and really building up the audience, and doing this whole West Coast tour, and they didn't do anything with it. But once it came down to finally actually getting it out there, they said, okay, so we're going to put it on iTunes and cable satellite, and then maybe Hulu later. I said, I could have gone to iTunes and cable satellite myself. Like, why am I giving you 30% of all my profits and all the audience building that I'm doing for something that I could have done myself? So this is over. And they basically said, no, you can't have your film back. You're in contract with us. So screw you. And I said, no, you are not doing what you originally said that you would do with this contract. So it turned into this legal battle, and I basically had to buy them out of the contract for $3,500. And basically it was like, I was screwed over, but I also, like, I didn't have an attorney look at the contract, so I kind of screwed myself over, and I put my trust, I didn't do my due diligence. I put my trust in people who didn't really know what they were doing, and they're just slimy salesmen. They're salesmen. That's what they do, is sell you. They sell you, they sell your film, they sell other, platforms and distributors to take your film. And I felt really a huge failure when that happened, because I allowed myself to be taken advantage of. And also because, like, we were $250,000 in debt, $200,000 in debt. Like, I so badly didn't just want to make a film. Like, my goal really was to pay back my investors.
Right.
And so then we didn't have any distribution deal. I ended up self-distributing it. We've made, like, I don't know, maybe $20,000 back, but that's like nothing, for the investors. So I felt a huge failure for my first independent feature film, but apparently that's like 95% of all independent filmmakers' experiences is like their dissatisfaction with the independent distribution world. Like, I just basically was like everybody else. And it takes about 3 films for a filmmaker, a director, to really get noticed and to actually start making a profit in the film industry. So I felt a huge failure, but I learned so much. And for my next film, like, I'm going to be way ahead of the curve. So there's always that silver lining of, sure, it was a failure, but that gets you a lot closer to a success, and you learn a lot more than if you were successful in that anyways.
Absolutely. And maybe if you were successful in that situation, you go on to a bigger, gigantic film and you did the same thing and get burned even bigger, right? And so sometimes that failure early on can be such a blessing to have. And the other thing you learned was that you're not alone. You actually just entered the club with everybody else, that you're not the only one that's failed. You're not the only one that's had that failure. In fact, it's a common failure. And that's how a lot of our obstacles are, that we when we're going through it, we feel like we're the only one in the world going through it. And nobody else has ever experienced this before. And if you kind of just broaden your vision, you'll see that there are a lot of people who have failed just as badly, probably even worse. And you just learn the lessons from those and do like you did, pick it up and keep on pushing. So thanks, Nick, for really sharing a few different obstacles that you faced that I think some people may have gotten to and turned around, right? I tell people, a saying I've heard somewhere about not treating your obstacles like signs, right? Sometimes people reach an obstacle and they're like, oh, this is a sign that I'm not supposed to do this, right? The school's threatening to kick you out, and you say, this is a sign that maybe I'm not supposed to make films.
It's just a test. The universe is testing you. How badly do you really want this?
Yes, 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 yes. And so make sure you've got that clarity that Nick talked about and you're willing to fight for it and push through. So Nick, thank you so much for sharing those obstacles. Before we kind of transition to the end of the show here, you talked about two of your films, The Miracle Morning as well as Sharp. Tell us a little bit more about those films before we wrap up here. I'd hate to talk to you on this interview and not learn a little more about your films.
All right. So, Sharp is basically inspired by this cutlery company. It's called Cutco Cutlery. The company that markets and sells Cutco is Vector Marketing, and they recruit college students to sell knives to their friends and family. So it's a direct sales organization, and it really is it's really the best entrepreneur school that anybody as a college student can take. And I am the reason that I am the person I am today is because of the experience that I had working for Vector Marketing, selling knives. Gave me so many skills that I needed to be the filmmaker that I wanted to be. But I was a manager for an office, and I started seeing all of these funny, hilarious stories that we all experienced as reps. Like every single rep was experiencing similar stories. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I'm a filmmaker, and I thought, why isn't there already a film about this? It was perfect fodder for storytelling. So I wrote a script about it, and it turned into Sharp, which is a charming indie dramedy about a lazy stoner surf bum who has to adapt to the corporate world and learn professional skills and learn how to sell knives in order to support his family after his dad loses his job. So it's about the current state of the economy back then in 2008. It's about personal growth, entrepreneurship. It's about sales. It's about overcoming obstacles and, just going out there and, going and grabbing your dream, basically. So it's really, really if it was put into any genre, like on iTunes or Netflix, it would be a drama or a comedy, like a stoner comedy. But beyond that, I'd like to brand it as this new genre that I like to call personal growth film, because it's the obstacles and the conflict are not external. They're all internal, which is really how we learn and grow, in real life. Yeah. So the storytelling structure is a little bit different than most traditional, the traditional Hollywood formula in feature filmmaking. But it's really just, it's really funny and it's really great. And people have actually, after watching it, they've gone off to hit their big push goals and to win, the big push period competition.
Oh, wow.
In their sales competitions. And it's just fun. It's just a fun movie. I've not heard a single person say that they didn't enjoy it. And that sort of led to me meeting Hal Elrod, because he was also, he's a Cutco Hall of Famer. He sold over $1 million worth of knives. And
oh, wow. I never knew that about him.
Yeah. So he when he was hit head on by the drunk driver and he died in the car accident, that was right after one of his first talks at a Cutco conference, because he was a star Cutco sales rep. So after that happened, he wrote his first book, Taking Life Head On, and he became a motivational speaker, telling a story about how he died and how he overcame those obstacles, because he was told that he would never walk again and that he would have permanent brain damage. And then he went on to not only to walk, but to run an ultra marathon and to overcome his, to regrow basically his frontal lobe and overcome the memory problems that he was having and stuff like that. So he started becoming a motivational speaker, talking about overcoming obstacles that way. But then, so that's basically how I met him, because I asked him to play a small role in the film, and he's like, "Oh, absolutely, I'd love to do that."
Yeah.
And after that, he, asked me to do some videos for him, and I just basically became his video marketing director. And eventually, his goal was really to change millions of lives one morning at a time. And originally it was 1 million. He wanted to change 1 million lives. And now the book is in 20 different countries. So it's a much bigger vision now. But I told him hey, Hal, if you want to reach millions, not a lot of people are willing to read a self-help book. The self-help industry has sort of this brand problem right now. But a lot of people would be willing to watch a movie. So why don't we adapt the book into a movie? And it took me maybe 18 months to finally get a yes from him. And I just kept asking him and kept pushing him. And he finally was like, all right, let's do it. And then once we started, it's been a year now. We've been in production about a year. We've interviewed Robert Kiyosaki, Robin Sharma, Pat Flynn, John Lee Dumas, Marcy Shimoff, all of these, Dr. John Gray,
Wow.
all of these like really amazing entrepreneurs and authors and podcasters in the personal growth and the entrepreneurial space, just about how they start their mornings and sharing their wisdom about morning routines and just manifesting the life that you want. And we hope to share it with, at least 1 million people.
Well, Nick, you can count me in as one of those million. I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to that movie. Yeah. So thanks. I just wanted to make sure we did. I get so caught up in goals and purpose and obstacles that I don't want to miss sharing what you're working on right now. And those both sound like awesome projects, two very different projects that both sound phenomenal. And as much as I love to laugh, I'm sure that I'll love Sharp as well. And I love that kind of new genre, right? The personal development, personal growth film.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, Nick, we are actually winding down now. So we're at the point where I love to do what I call the hot seat scenario. So you're ready to play the hot seat scenario, Nick?
Let's do it. My butt's feeling warm.
All right, it's getting warm. So you are being forced to swap lives with one of two people. You get to choose between person A, who works, 40 to 50 hours a week, is living check to check, but spends an average of 2 to 3 hours a night watching TV or surfing online just to kind of wind down. And then we've got person B, who makes, we'll say whatever number you want to choose, that is, they're doing well, whether that's 100,000, 200, 300. But person B works crazy long hours and has very little free time. Person B feels like he wakes up in the morning, goes to work, eats at work, comes home, goes to sleep, and does it all over again. Now, neither one of these people feel like they're living their purpose or their passion. They know this isn't the right place for them to be, and they really just want to turn this around and head in a direction that's closer to their purpose and passion. So Nick, here's your challenge. Which one of these two people are you going to swap lives with? And what's one or two quick steps that you're going to take to start turning this around and get them pointed to the right direction?
That's a good question. Well, I feel like I am person B.
Okay.
So I would probably switch with person A because I'm definitely wanting more time in my life right now. My time is very limited. I would quit my job immediately. Hopefully there's like some, an emergency fund already saved up. I'm assuming most people with jobs like have some sort of financial stability since they get a stable paycheck every month. That's the same amount that's budgeted easily, but I would quit my job immediately and just take a few months to reorganize my priorities, get in line with my passion and my purpose, which to me are synonymous. There's a lot of science behind purpose. The Hungarian psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who basically coined the term flow, says that when your skills are uniquely matched to the task at hand, you go into this state of consciousness called flow, where all your surroundings disappear, time disappears. You can work for hours and hours without stopping. You have like this immediate feedback system. You have unlimited energy. There's byproducts or symptoms like ecstasy. You feel amazing, and that's called flow. And I believe that's when you are actually in the process of working on your purpose or your passion. So I would figure out how to align my passion and my purpose together and take a few months to do some soul searching, some traveling, meeting other people who are already living their purpose and pursuing their passions and living their passions every day. And I would talk to them and figure out what mine are. And then after the few months, I would start to align my actions with that passion and purpose. And once the passion, the purpose, and the action are aligned, amazing things happen. The universe opens doors where there once were walls, and which is a Joseph Campbell quote. And things just seem to flow like really, really well. A lot of amazing things have happened in my life not just because of my talents and abilities, but also because the universe like conspires to help me because I am doing what I was put here on this planet to do, and that's what the universe wants me to do.
Right. Wow, Nick. Thank you for playing the hot seat scenario. I think I'm gonna make a quick edit here. Person A is living check to check and can't quit his job, but everything you said I think applies to person B, who has plenty of money and has little time.
Living paycheck to paycheck, I'd still quit my job.
Gotcha. Okay, you're sticking with person A anyway.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. I put people on the spot with the hot seat scenario, and I love getting the different answers from people, and I know that I've got different listeners, and some answers resonate with people better than others, and that's why I love getting all the variety of opinions on what you would do in that scenario. So, Nick, we are at the end of the episode, and so before we completely wrap up here, I'm going to ask you for two more things. One, I'd love for you to tell our friends and family how they can find out more about you, how they can reach out to you, any contact information you'd like to leave with them. And then just go ahead right into whatever motivational quote or mantra or saying, whatever it is you use to kind of help you get through those bumps, right? Maybe you got a day where you need a little extra oomph. I'd love to hear what motivational quote or mantra you use on those days. So your contact information followed by your motivational quote or mantra.
Well, the best way to get in touch with me, I guess, is through Facebook at Nick Conedera, and also my email, which is just nick@nickconedera.com. But the best way to sort of get into my world is to watch the film, of course, which is now available. Sharp is now available on Amazon, iTunes, and PlayStation 4 now. And if you just search Sharp Nick Conedera, it'll pop up for sure. And I've been reminding myself of this mantra, I am not my mind, which is a lyric by one of my favorite musicians, Brother James, who's also a good friend of mine. And he's got this amazing song called I Am Not My Mind, and just constantly reminding myself, I don't have to be stressed. I don't have to listen to any of my thoughts because I'm not my mind. I'm not my thoughts. I am the energy within this space that I occupy, and I have a choice to listen to my thoughts or not. I am not my mind.
I love it. I love it. Nick, thank you so much with being just really generous with your time and telling us about your obstacles and your trials and sharing a little bit about your journey to success and this movie that's coming out. So thank you for that, Nick. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Friends and family, as you know, you can find links to Nick's contact information, links to his movie, all that good stuff on the show notes page. So just go to livethegoals.com and go to the podcast page, enter Nick in the search bar, and his show notes will pop right up. I know a lot of you listen to this on iTunes, and so guess what? This episode's about to end, and when this ends, just go ahead and search for Sharp, and you can watch the movie while you're probably in the gym, you're in the car. Go ahead. Well, maybe not in the car, but if you're not driving, then why not? I mean, you're already on iTunes. Go ahead, check out the film, have a great laugh, and learn a little something along the way. So, friends and family, until next time, remember to set goals that matter and live the goals you set. Friends and family, thank you so much for subscribing and continuing to listen to this podcast. I really do appreciate each and every download and listen that I get. I'd love for you to help me get the word out about Live the Goals podcast so that we can grow and add more like-minded people to our family. All you have to do is leave a 5-star rating and a short review in your podcast player for Live the Goals podcast. By taking a minute to rate and review the podcast, you let other like-minded people know that they should take a listen and join our family. So, thanks for spreading the word, and until next time, remember to set and reach goals that matter.
Thanks for checking out the show today, and make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. We hope you take away something that helps fill your life with purpose and laughter. And make sure you head over to livethegoals.com for more info on guests and resources. Remember to set and reach goals that lead you to a life of purpose and passion.